The age of Milton is defined by the Civil War. Its beginning is characterized by the disputes and tensions that culminated in armed conflict in 1642. The middle part of this period witnesses intermittent battles that persisted until the execution of Charles I in 1649. The later part encompasses the formation of the Commonwealth, the emergence and subsequent demise of Cromwell, the disorder following his passing, and ultimately the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. Throughout this era, a noticeable decline from the vibrant Elizabethan era is evident in various aspects. There is a reduction in artistic output, particularly in poetry, with a preference for shorter lyrical forms. The fervor and intensity seen in earlier poetry led to a more intellectually playful style, with prose displaying a matured melancholy. Prose experiences a surge in activity, often accompanying a decline in poetic production. While the Civil War may seem like a localized event in English history, its narrow focus intensified societal divisions, significantly influencing literature and culture. In an era that produced fewer towering literary figures compared to the Elizabethan age, Milton shines as one of the greatest. His prose is revered for its in argumentation, while his poetry is often considered second only to Shakespeare's. Coined by Dr. Johnson, the term metaphysical poets encompasses poets like Cowley and Donne who were influenced by the complex metaphysical style. Their work, rich in imagery and thought-provoking conceits, displays remarkable psychological insight. In contrast to the metaphysical poets' religious themes, the Cavaliers, exemplified by Herrick, Lovelace, and Suckling, explored themes of love with classical restraint and style. Despite civil strife, prose flourished, witnessing advancements in sermons, famlets, and various other genres. Notably, prose style saw significant refinement during this period. Various factors, including civil unrest and Puritan opposition, contributed to the decline of drama. Notably, Milton's grand epic, which might have been a play in the Elizabethan era, reflects the era's lack of dramatic temperament. The closure of theatres in 1642 marked the end of an era for English drama. Born in Brett Street, Cheapside, London, John Milton's father worked as a money scrivener. Educated at St. Paul's School in London and later at Cambridge, his rebellious nature led to his temporary expulsion from the university. Upon earning his degree in 1632, Milton abandoned his plans for the church and retreated to Horton, a village in Buckinghamshire where his father had retired from business. Embracing a life of letters, Milton delved into poetry, mathematics, and music during his secluded years. In 1638, he embarked on a tour of the continent, spending considerable time in Italy among scholars and intellectuals. The looming Civil War compelled his return to England, where he established a small school in London. In 1643, Milton married a significantly younger woman, but their marriage quickly soured, leading to her departure for 2 years. During this time, he penned provocative pamphlets advocating for divorce. Following the execution of the king in 1649, Milton's fervent support for the parliamentary cause earned him a role as Secretary for Foreign Tongues in the Commonwealth government. He served as Secretary to the Council of State, drafting Latin documents and writing pamphlets championing the Republican cause. By the time of the Restoration in 1660, Milton's eyesight was failing and the return of monarchy dashed his hopes for the Republic. Despite facing imprisonment and isolation, he managed to evade severe punishment. Retreating to an obscure village in Buckinghamshire, Milton continued to write poetry despite his blindness. He passed away in London and was laid rest there. Most of Milton's prose works were penned during the tumultuous period of his life from 1640 to 1660, a time marked by his active involvement in public affairs. These writings hold particular interest as they often directly address either his personal matters or pressing public concerns. In total, he produced 25 phablets, with 21 in English and the remaining 4 in Latin. His foray into pamphleteering commenced early in 1641 when he engaged in a spirited debate with Bishop Hall on the subject of episcopacy. Subsequently, while engaged in teaching, he authored Of Education in 1644, though it received mixed reviews. Notably, when faced with the abandonment by his wife, Milton penned two scandalous pamphlets advocating for divorce in 1643 and 1644. These works stirred controversy due to their bold opinions and sharp writing style. Critics seized upon technicalities, highlighting Milton's failure to obtain proper licensing as required by law. In response, Milton crafted his renowned tract Areopagitica in 1644, stirring defense of press freedom. Later works include a Latin defense of the execution of Charles I and other actions of the Commonwealth government. In his final years, Milton embarked on projects such as partially completed History of Britain and other scholarly endeavors. When assessing Milton's prose style, it is essential to consider the circumstances that prompted its creation. Penned swiftly amidst heated debates and urgent topics, his pamphlets exhibit a turbulent and disjointed method, characterized by fervor, aggression, and an expansive intellect. Milton's prose displays a blend of impassioned zeal, scholarly depth, and a vivid imagination. While lacking in humor, proportion, and restraint, these works stand among the most powerful and influential controversial writings in the English language. The majority of Milton's poetry was composed during two distinct periods, with a gap of 25 years between them. The first period encompasses his university years and his time at Horton from 1629 to 1640. During this time, Milton displayed remarkable maturity and promise in his poetic compositions. Notable works from this period include the majestic Ode on the Morning of Christ's Nativity, along with poems such as On Shakespeare and On Arriving at the Age of 23. These early poems showcase Milton's command of elevated language and his lofty literary and religious ideals. While at Horton around 1632, he penned El Allegro and Il Penseroso, two extended poems in octosyllabic couplets exploring contrasting states of mind, joy and contemplation. While ornamental and stylish poems brim with scholarly imagination and skillful poetic expression. Comus, a masque featuring elegant blank verse and charming lyrical passages, also belongs to this period. Lycidas, an elegy mourning the loss of his friend Edward King, delves into Milton's existential struggles with mortality and the quest for enduring fame. Through fluctuating emotions from doubt and fear to serene trust in divine providence, the poem resonates with passionate sincerity. The second period from around 1660 to 1674 marks the later years of Milton's life, during which he produced fewer works, primarily a few sonnets. Lycidas, counted among Milton's greatest achievements, represents a significant innovation in English poetry. While adopting a pastoral form, the poem transcends its artificial structure to reveal Milton's own poetic mastery. With the richness and melody reminiscent of Spenserian verse, Lycidas possesses a dignified intensity and a majestic use of language that surpasses even Spenser's capabilities. Its irregular stanza and rhyme scheme exude a haunting beauty, elevating Milton's elegy to an unparalleled height of poetic expression. During the period of 1660 to 1674, Milton's poetry reached its zenith with the matured expressions of his artistry. While the middle years saw only a handful of sonnets, these, alongside others composed at different intervals, exemplify Milton's mastery of the Italian form, a skill he consistently employs throughout. His sonnets possess a sweeping grandeur and sonorous resonance that sets him apart, with perhaps only Wordsworth as his successor in this regard. Notably, standout sonnets such as On His Blindness and On the Late Massacre in Piedmont showcase Milton's adeptness in this form. The seminal masterpiece of its time, Paradise Lost, embarked on its creation as early as 1658, finally unveiled to the world in 1667. Initially segmented into 10 books, it underwent a restructuring in its second edition, expanding to 12. This magnum opus adheres to the rigorous unity reminiscent of classical epics, delving into the theme of humanity's fall. Yet it extends beyond, exploring Lucifer's rebellion in heaven, celestial conflicts, and the subsequent expulsion of the rebels through intricate narrative threads. Milton's vision for the poem is expansive and authoritative, richly embellished with intricate details drawn from his profound grasp of classical and biblical literature. The characters, particularly Lucifer, are crafted on a monumental scale imbued with tragic grandeur. Blank verse employed throughout the work is a revelation, forging a new tradition in English poetry. While lacking the flexibility of Shakespearean meter, it brims with beauty and meticulous craftsmanship. Its modulation is nearly boundless, skillfully navigating variations in rhythm, pause, and cadence while maintaining a resounding dignity of expression. Though occasional lapses into verbosity and bombast occur, they are rare indeed. In 1671, Milton released his final volume of poetry, including Paradise Regained and Samson Agonistes. Paradise Regained, chronicling Christ's temptation and triumph, is intended as a complement to its predecessor, yet falls short of surpassing it. Brief and less ornate than Paradise Lost, it lacks the soaring imagination and elaborate rhythms of the earlier epic, with limited action and relatively unremarkable characters. Samson Agonistes, recounting Samson's demise as a captive of the Philistines, holds a peculiar fascination as Milton perceives parallels between the biblical hero and himself. Structured in adherence to the strict unity of time, place, and action reminiscent of Greek tragedy, its style is stark and austere, occasionally harsh and forbidding. Amidst the austerity, moments of profound pity and elevated hope resonate, reflecting Milton's indomitable spirit. Throughout his life, Milton's unwavering religious fervor remained steadfast. Even his adversaries acknowledged his sincerity. This devoutness permeates his earliest works, such as his sonnet, where he reflects on divine grace. It persists and deepens in his later works, notably Paradise Lost, where his primary aim is to elucidate the divine purpose to humanity. This religious inclination manifests in several aspects: choice of religious themes, particularly prominent in his later works, and sense of moral responsibility and elevation, propensity of didacticism and moralizing, sometimes leading to preachiness evident in Paradise Lost, puritanical narrowness of perspective reflected in his criticism of opponents, views on women's inferiority and disdain for the common populace. Interwoven with his religious severity is a profound appreciation for classical literature, despite its pagan and sensual nature. Milton's extensive learning encompassed both classical and Christian traditions, evident in his fluency in Latin as well as English. The classical strain is indiscernible in adoption of classical and semi-classical forms such as the epic, Greek tragedy, and pastoral, elaborate descriptions and vast similes in Paradise Lost, profusion of classical allusions across his oeuvre, dignity, precision, and care in his style, reflecting classical ideals. His egoism takes a high classical tone as seen in his comparisons with ancient prophets. Milton's poetic genius lies not in innovation but in refinement and perfection. He imbues every form he touches with grace and dignity, achieving unparalleled mastery in the epic, ode, classical drama, sonnet, masque, elegy. His metrical prowess is exceptional, characterized by ease, assurance, and success across various poetic forms. Milton occupies a pivotal position in literature, emerging after the Elizabethan era when poetic conventions were in flux. His resolute hand and temperament consolidated the disparate tendencies of his time, bringing together precision and variety to English poetry. Subsequent generations, lacking the vigor of the Elizabethans, found inspiration in Milton, fostering a new era of classicism that endured for over a century. The metaphysical poets. The metaphysical poets share several common features. They largely wrote lyrical poetry. Their subject matter primarily revolves around religious or amatory themes. They demonstrate considerable metrical skill even in intricate lyrical structures. The poetic style is characterized by sudden bursts of beauty in phrase and diction, often incorporating unexpected linguistic turns and figures of speech. George Herbert, born at Montgomery Castle, received his education at Westminster School and Trinity College, Cambridge. He held various positions within the Church of England, eventually becoming rector of Bemerton in 1630. Notably, none of his poems were published during his lifetime. His collection, The Temple, published in 1633, reflects his deep devotion to the Church of England and his engagement with practical theology. Herbert described the work as a depiction of the spiritual struggles he underwent before fully surrendering to Jesus Christ. His poems exhibit honesty, intimacy, sincerity, and humility, often imbued with a subtle humor. While Herbert employs metaphysical conceits, they differ from the scholastic imagery favored by John Donne. He is known for his precise and simple expression, experimentation with unique metrical patterns, and a keen sense of harmony. His poetry delicately captures nuanced shifts in emotion. Richard Crawshay, son of a Puritan clergyman, was born in London and educated at the Charterhouse and Cambridge. His allegiance to the Royalist cause during the Civil War led to the loss of his fellowship at Peterhouse in 1644. Subsequently, he converted to Roman Catholicism and passed away in Loreto. His significant works include Steps to the Temple and portions of Carmen Dio Nostra. While Crawshay shares some characteristics with the metaphysical poets, his poetry diverges in many aspects. Unlike Herbert and Donne, his works lack complexity of thought and tension. His style is colloquialism, favoring pictorial imagery over intellectual conceits. However, Crawshay shares the metaphysical penchant for striking conceits, though often veering into the realm of fantastical. His poetry is renowned for its fervor and emotional intensity, fueled by his religious zeal. While characterized by gaudy extravagances and sensuous embellishments, Crawshay's verse also displays moments of simple beauty amid undisciplined rapture. Henry Vaughan hailed from Wales, descended from an ancient lineage after his studies at Oxford. He pursued law in London before turning to medicine, eventually practicing in Brecon. His notable works include Poems, which was published in 1646, Olar Iscanus, published in 1651, Silex Scintillans, published in 1650, and Thalia Redviva, published in 1678. Vaughan's love poems, though often adorned with prettiness and occasional beauty, pale in comparison to his religious compositions, particularly those found in Silex Scintillans. His religious fervor is marked by a noble imagination, giving rise to lines and ideas of remarkable strength and beauty. Additionally, his profound appreciation for nature, evident in works like The Retreat, sometimes echoes the sentiments of Wordsworth, exhibiting a closeness and insightfulness. Thomas Carew was born in Kent and educated at Oxford before pursuing law at the Middle Temple. Despite achieving success as a courtier, he eventually faded into obscurity. His collection Poems showcases his undeniable lyrical talent, influenced by figures like Donne and Johnson, but possessing a distinctive character of its own. While his fancy is richly colored, it suffers from licentiousness and poor taste. One of his representative lyrics exemplifies exquisite fancy and golden diction, rarely equaled in its beauty. Abraham Cowley was born in London to a wealthy family, educated at Westminster School and Cambridge. He demonstrated exceptional scholarly prowess. A staunch supporter of the monarchy, he served the royal family during exile and returned to England at the Restoration, spending the rest of his life in literary pursuits. Cowley, an infant prodigy, displayed remarkable literary talent from a young age, producing epic romances and other works throughout his life. Though his most renowned poem, The Davidies, is a somewhat dreary epic on King David, his versatility is evident in various genres, including love poetry and Pindaric odes. However, the metaphysical strain in Cowley's work waned over time, giving way to learned ingenuity and mannerism at the expense of deep feeling. Andrew Marvell, son of a clergyman, received his education at Cambridge after serving as a tutor and assisting Milton in diplomatic duties. He became a member of Parliament for Hull until his death. Marvell's poems, circulated in manuscript during his lifetime, were not published until 1681. Praised as the finest examples of serious and secular metaphysical verse, Marvell's work embodies the wit, passionate argumentation, and learned imagery of the metaphysical poets, combined with the clarity, control, and gracefulness of Johnson's classical followers. His rhythms are flexible, his melody delicate, and his love for nature and gardens is evident throughout, reflecting a high seriousness and absolute sincerity in his craft. The Cavalier poets, known for their lyrical compositions, primarily explore themes of love and war. Robert Herrick, born in London and educated in Cambridge, held a living in Devonshire until his death. His works include noble numbers, Hesperides, comprising a mix of sacred and secular poems. Herrick demonstrates a lyrical prowess marked by freshness, passion, and precision, while also infusing his verses with meditative and observant qualities. Influenced by Johnson and classical literature, he celebrates worldly pleasures alongside a keen appreciation of nature. Notable among his shorter pieces are To Anthea, To Julia, and Cherry Ripe. Richard Lovelace, born in Woolwich and educated at the Charter House in Oxford, faced imprisonment by the Roundheads during the Civil War. Though granted parole, he was limited in his active support for Charles I. Lovelace saw military service in France before returning to England, where he died in obscure circumstances. His collection Lucasta features his finest shorter pieces, including renowned lyrics such as To Althea from Prison and To Lucasta Going Was, characterized by simplicity, sincerity, and a lack of the cynicism prevalent in his era. However, many of his poems exhibit carelessness in craftsmanship, marked by affected wit, gallantry, and obscure language due to extravagant and grotesque conceits. Sir John Suckling, born in Middlesex, inherited a large fortune at 18. Educated at Oxford, he travelled extensively in Europe and served as a volunteer under Gustavus Adolphus, earning favour with Charles I. Implicated in royalist plots, he fled abroad in 1641, where he died under mysterious circumstances. Suckling's poetry reflects the Cavalier spirit, characterized by wit, charm, and gallantry. Despite his aristocratic background, his works often exhibit a playful and light-hearted tone. Philip Massinger was born in Salisbury, educated at Oxford, and pursued a literary career in London, writing plays for the King's Men acting troupe. Despite surviving begging, letters indicating financial struggles, he continued his dramatic endeavors until his death and burial in London. Massinger initially collaborated with older and more established playwrights, particularly Fletcher, whose influence on him was significant. Notable among his work are comedies like A New Way to Play Old Debts and The City Madam, along with tragedies such as The Duke of Milan and The Unnatural Combat. His strengths lie in the fluency and vitality of his blank verse, the clarity and solidity of his plot construction, and his adept handling of theatrical elements. However, his characters often veer towards types rather than fully developed individuals, and his tendency for repetition weakens his works. Massinger's portrayal of characters, situations, and theatrical devices can strain credibility, with his villains being excessively villainous and his female characters shamelessly depicted. While predominantly serious in tone and often addressing political issues of his time, Massinger's works lack genuine humor and can sometimes feel forced in their comedic elements. John Ford was born in Devonshire, possibly educated at Oxford, and though he studied law, he never practiced it. Ford emerged as a prolific playwright, primarily focusing on tragedies, both independently and in collaboration with other writers. His works exhibit a morbid inclination towards the macabre and the unnatural. While uneven in quality, Ford's most powerful plays possess genuine tragic force and lofty literary aspirations. The Broken Heart, published in 1633, wrenches the reader's emotions with its intense tragedy, while "'Tis Pity She's a Whore" delves into grim narratives of forbidden passion. Perkin Warbeck, a historical tragedy, is esteemed among the finest examples of historical drama outside of Shakespeare's canon. Ford collaborated on The Witch of Edmonton with Decker, Rowley, and others, creating a compelling domestic drama. Other noteworthy works attributed to Ford include The Lover's Melancholy, Love's Sacrifice, and The Fancies Chaste and Noble, published in 1638. Sir Thomas Browne stands as a representative of the finest prose writers of his era. Browne was born in London, educated at Winchester and Oxford, and pursued studies in medicine. After earning his MD degree at Leiden, he returned to England around 1634 and settled in Norwich by 1637, where he practiced medicine successfully for the rest of his life. Despite the tumultuous times of civil unrest, Browne's prose remains remarkably tranquil. His five works, though individually small, exhibit remarkable and consistent quality. Religio Medici, written around 1635 and published in 1642, serves as his confession of faith, blending religious conviction with scientific skepticism. Pseudodoxia Epidemica, or Vulgar Errors, published in 1646, shares a similar ambivalence, exploring common misconceptions with the erudition reminiscent of Burton. Hydriotaphia, Urne Burial, published in 1658, often considered his masterpiece, delves into reflections on human mortality inspired by the discovery of ancient funeral urns. The Garden of Cyrus is a treatise on the Quinquenex. His final work, Christian Morals, was published posthumously. Browne's literary renown rests primarily on his stylistic prowess rather than philosophical depth. His prose reflects the ornate style of his era, Zenith, characterized by a strong Latin influence and occasional obscurity. Browne's writing habitually incorporates Latin tags and references. His sentences are meticulously crafted, forming artistically composed paragraphs. Most notably, his diction boasts a richness unparalleled among English prose writers, with harmonious rhythms and carefully tuned cadences. While occasionally obscure and seldom lively or diverting, the solemnity and beauty of Browne's prose have endowed it with enduring fascination. Edward Hyde, Earl of Clarendon, hailed from Wiltshire and received his education at Oxford before pursuing a career in law. Initially aligned with the parliamentary faction, his disapproval of their stance on the church led him to switch sides and became a staunch advocate of the royalists. Following the royalist defeat, he accompanied Charles II into exile and later served as Lord Chancellor and was ennobled as Earl of Clarendon upon the Restoration. However, his strict demeanor clashed with the licentious atmosphere of the Restoration period, leading to his exile in 1667. He passed away in France and was interred in Westminster Abbey. Clarendon's magnum opus, The History of the Rebellion and Civil Wars in England, commenced in 1646 and culminated during his final years of exile. Though lacking in perfect accuracy and proportion, the work offers a compelling narrative replete with masterful character sketches. Despite its lengthy and parenthetical sentences, the prose remains readable, marking it as a seminal English historical work upon its eventual publication in 1704. Thomas Hobbes, born in Malmesbury to a clergyman, completed his education at Oxford and later served as tutor to the future Earl of Devonshire. A royalist supporter, he faced exile during the reign of Roundheads but received a pension upon the Restoration, thereafter dedicating the remainder of his life to literary pursuits. Hobbes actively engaged in the intellectual conflicts of his era with his seminal work Leviathan, garnering considerable attention due to its contentious political theories. Written in a clear and precise style, the book's rigorous exposition and argumentation elicited significant controversy transcending party lines. Jeremy Taylor, a prominent literary divine, was born to humble origins as the son of a barber and received his education at Cambridge before relocating to Oxford. A fervent advocate for the royalist cause, he endured imprisonment by the parliamentary forces before being appointed to the Irish bishoprics of Down and Dromore upon the Restoration. Taylor's eloquent preaching style extended to his prose works, comprising tracts, sermons, and theological treatises. Noteworthy among his writings are The Liberty of Prophesying, Holy Living, and Holy Dying, characterized by abundant quotations, rhetorical flourishes, and melodious language structured into lengthy yet comprehensible sentences. Thomas Fuller, born to a clergyman in Northamptonshire, pursued his education at Cambridge and entered holy orders. Serving as a chaplain to the royalist forces during the Civil War, he later reconciled with the parliamentary party following their victory, continuing his literary endeavors until passing shortly after the Restoration. Fuller's sharp wit and tireless industry are evident in his diverse literary output, including historical works such as The History of the Holy War and The Church History of Britain, as well as pamphlets like Good Thoughts in Bad Times. His enduring reputation rests on his posthumously published The Worthies of England, showcasing his distinctive jocularity at its finest. Development of literary forms. The lyrical poetry of this period predominantly revolves around themes of love and religion, while some love poems exemplified by poets like Herrick, Lovelace, Suckling, and Carew adhere to conventional and courtly expressions, lacking genuine passion. Religious lyrics such as those by Crawshaw and Vaughan often display intense inspiration and fervor. Milton's religious verses, particularly his sonnets, exhibit deeper emotional resonance and sincerity. Though earlier works like Beowulf exhibit epic qualities, the English epic as conventionally understood emerges during this era. Cowley's Davideis, Dave Nunn's Gondibert aspire to this status but fall short due to a lack of inner spirit. Milton's Paradise Lost, though remarkable in its ambition and inspiration, deviates from traditional epic subjects, while Paradise Regained follows a similar vein though with less impact. The Pindaric Ode, characterized by ornate language and artificial diction, gains popularity during this period. Exemplified by Cowley's Pindaric Odes, its seemingly irregular structure belies stringent rules catering to a transitional period's desire for artificiality. Works like Milton's Il Allegro and Il Penseroso, Herrick's pastoral poems, and Crawshaw's religious descriptive pieces typify this genre. Other notable works include Denham's Cooper's Skill and Chamberlain's Paronida. demonstrating a shift towards conventional and bookish landscapes over wild nature, signaling the emergence of a new classicism. Following the decline of drama in 1642, playwrights like Massinger and Ford sustained the legacy of the Elizabethan era, while others like Shirley produced comedies centered on London life. Despite these efforts, the period witnesses a temporary collapse in dramatic output with few noteworthy contributions. Characterized as the golden age of the English pulpit, this era is a proliferation of sermons marked by eloquence, learning, and strong argumentation. Notable figures include Jeremy Taylor, Fuller, South, Barrow, and Baxter. Sir Thomas Browne's moral works, Hobbes's political treatises, and John Hales's religious writings highlight the period's philosophical output, characterized by advancing scholarship and occasionally quaint conceits. Clarendon's and Fuller's historical works stand out for their preeminence and influence, contributing to the development of historical writing during this period. Miscellaneous prose encompasses a diverse range of works, including famlets by Milton, Hobbes, and Fuller. Isaac Walton celebrated the complete Angler, Owen Phelan's essays, and James Howell's familiar letters, reflecting the era's varied literary landscape and interest in essay. In the lyrical style of the period, there is a noticeable departure from the natural grandeur of the Elizabethan era. However, this shift is accompanied by an increase in refinement, polish, and metrical skill. Despite the decline, the best examples of lyrical poetry from this time exhibit a melodious resonance and beauty unique to the period. John Cleveland's works exemplify a more extreme metaphysical quality known as Clevelandisms. In blank verse, conflicting trends emerge. While Milton's style achieves a magnificent pinnacle, the dramatic works of minor playwrights like Suckling and Davenant exhibit a chaotic mixture of verse and prose, indicating a decline in poetic quality. The heroic couplet gains prominence during the period, marking the beginning of its long reign. Though examples of this form can be traced back to earlier works, it is most commonly associated with Dryden, Pope, Cowley's Davies, Denham's Cooperkill, and the poems of Edmund Waller. In prose, contrasting tendencies are also evident. The predominant movement leans towards ornate prose, exemplified by writers like Browne, Jeremy Taylor, Clarendon, and William Drummond of Hawthornden. Drummond's A Cypress Grove reflects the fashionable funeral vein of the time. In the middle style, precision characterizes the prose of Hobbes in Leviathan. On the other end of the spectrum, simplicity is embraced by miscellaneous writers like Howell Feltham and especially Isaac Walton.